and he's joining me from Texas. Welcome back to our program, Congressman. Can I first start by asking you about a very, very serious matter? You know, the president has got to decide whether he's going to take an action that could hit a sovereign state and expand what is a sort of a war in the Middle East right now, a widening war.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be a tough decision no matter what he decides to do. Look, we have a longstanding position, and I think it's the right position that we will defend ourselves, that Americans have a right to defend themselves if they're attacked, and we have a right to retaliate if our troops are attacked. And up to this point, with 160 attacks on American troops, you know, throughout the Middle East, we've been lucky to the point where there has been no loss of American soldiers' lives until this last attack. And that was obviously very tragic with dozens injured. So he's going to have to make a decision. I think the thing to keep in mind is, of course, nobody, I don't even think Iran is seeking to widen this war. But when we don't react, particularly on something as deadly as what happened, that is seen as weakness. As much as we'd like to think that we can now just engage in a friendly negotiation with Iran and kind of get everybody to step back from the brink. That's not how it's worked. So I don't envy the president's decision, whether he takes this directly to the militias that did this, or whether he expands this to, for instance, maritime assets with Iran. But I think it's going to have to be a significant strike to make it clear that any benefit you think you are gaining from attacking Americans in the region, the cost will actually far exceed any benefit.
So with that, let me then ask you, Senator Lindsey Graham has tweeted, hit Iran now, hit them hard. Senator Cornyn writes, target Tehran. The administration says we're not looking for a war with Iran. And you've laid out two scenarios that would, exact punishment, but not directly hit the nation. Now, President Trump says the current situation would never have happened if he was president. But as you know, and as we all know, Americans were killed on his watch just before Qasem Soleimani was targeted. But he was hit outside Iran. Nonetheless, it was a major Iranian military and political figure. He didn't want full-out confrontation either.
Yeah, I mean, look, so with former President Trump, I mean, when he did kill Soleimani, that was actually a pretty brave thing to do. And there were a lot of folks that said, oh, this is going to lead to World War III, and it didn't. And I think the lesson from that is it's the same as Vladimir Putin. They will advance until they hit a brick wall and they know they can go no further. That said, it's easy to tweet, if you're Lindsey Graham, it's easy to tweet, just bomb Iran, because you don't have to make the decision. You can just be on whatever side as you want. And if you look in the GOP, there's actually a big split. There's the bomb Iran now crew, and then there's the Joe Biden starting World War III crew. And instead of arguing with each other, because they're on very different positions in this issue, they're all arguing against Joe Biden for some reason. Let's see what he does here. But I think there is a way for him to have a significant response that is tough. The key is we don't want to look like we're just reacting because we have to. A response that is tough, that's not necessarily bombing the middle of Tehran and trying to expand the war further.
So let's talk about the other issue that is one of the big issues around this Israel-Gaza war, the Houthis. Again, the US and the UK decided to take air action against their missile bases or whatever they have there in Yemen. It is one of the poorest places in the world. It is war-torn. The Houthis are non-state actors, and yet they seem to be winning not just the propaganda war, getting tons and tons of buy-in from young people all over the world, including in the United States, but they haven't stopped. So if the United States can't stop the Houthis, what can they do about Iran and its other backed militias?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a tough question, and it's all about what level of force are we willing to use. Now, look, force doesn't solve everything. And, we saw in Afghanistan, the United States won't be defeated when it comes to the military, the US and the UK particularly. We can be defeated in our will. And so with the Houthis, for instance, we've attacked them a number of times. We've taken out some of their anti-ship missiles as they have stood up, but they're still attacking. This is a long-term process to degrade their ability to do this. And even if they're going to continue to fire at ships, one of the things we're showing is that the cost is not nothing. You want to fire one anti-ship missile, it's going to cost you 3 or 4 if we respond to that. That's important to look at this deterrence as a long game strategy. The problem is we kind of live in this moment where it feels like when we strike something once, we have to actually see immediate results. That's not necessarily the case, but that willingness, that will to stick it out is important. In terms of the youth, look, I have a huge problem with what's happening on TikTok. That's been litigated 100 times in the political side of things. But there is a failure somewhere in our education system that there are people that are showing, sympathy to the Houthis and actually heroism of the Houthis when they actually launched this attack against Israel and against shipping in the Red Sea out of whatever, some sense of brotherhood.
And it is precisely their as they say, anti-Zion and anti-US message that is resonating around the region. And as you say, amongst some in the United States and in the West. So given that the Gaza-Israel situation is the context and the frame for all of this heightened activity right now, yes, there's meant to be negotiations going on for a pause and more hostage prisoner swaps. But what about the pressure on President Gaza? On President Biden, a lot of political pressure on him. Do you think the White House expected this much pushback at home and abroad for its support of Israel?
I don't think they did. And I think, they've so far done a good job of kind of resisting that pressure. I mean, let's keep in mind, this is only 3 or so months ago that this war was kicked off. I mean, really, this was kicked off on October 7th with a brutal attack on civilians. I think the administration has played a good role in terms of trying to prevent the escalation against Hezbollah in the north. It seems like they have been able to walk Israel back, at least for the time being, and some of that. Continuing to stress to Israel the importance of precision bombing. Ground troops, by the way, are about the most precision way to execute a war because you have people on the ground and not just in the air. But this is going to take some time as well. And I think the administration did not see I don't think I'm blown away that there's the pushback that there is. When I just look at October 7th and how evil that day was, and now say that there are people that are blaming Israel for all of this. Look, you can disagree with how Israel's executing a war. I'll remind you, as you well know, when we fought ISIS, the entire city of Mosul was destroyed. The difference is the people in Mosul had a place to go. Right now, Egypt and Jordan have shut the borders to Gaza, and so their people don't have a place to go. There's a lot of issues here. But I'm going to tell you, if the United States was attacked like they were on October 7th, we wouldn't be